Thank you so much, Linda. I have Marie and Klaus with me. Please feel free to just take a seat. Yeah, Marie and Klaus will talk about what German startups need to scale. Marie, you're the head of regulatory policy at Meta, and before joining Meta over 7 years ago, you led the consumer and media policy department at Bitkom, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for your loyalty and coming back. And you also previously worked as a lawyer. Klaus, you're the co-founder and CTO of Codex AI. To everyone who doesn't know, Codex AI is a Berlin-based startup that uses generative AI agents to automate regulatory compliance for the financial industry. And you have been doing that for over 4 years, so thanks for being here, and yeah, thanks for shedding some light on the German startup perspective. Starting off, Klaus, looking at your own journey at Codex AI, what elements of the German and European startup ecosystem have been most supportive in helping you expand and scale?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great things to talk about, actually. I think there's a lot of things that we can improve. But I still think Germany, and especially Berlin, is a great place to found a startup. You've introduced the topic. Maybe I can talk a bit more about it later. It sounds very dry and complex at first. And we're mostly working with German banks, which maybe also don't have the reputation of being the fastest adopters. But we've actually seen everybody we worked with, for example, at Deutsche Bank, which we closely work together, they're super eager and keen and want to move forward and adopt the new technology. So that's a great thing for one. The second thing is we do have a lot of government funding programs, especially in the beginning, to help founders make the step from 0 to 1. So that's been also super helpful for us. And I think finally in Berlin, it's just a great ecosystem. It's a super international city. We attract talent from all over the world. We have people from Mexico, Turkey, Russia, even from Austria we have someone. So it's a really great place for people to come and work at startups.
That's amazing, and I think also the international perspective is also probably very valuable for everyone involved. What is Meta's perspective? I mean, you work really closely with startups globally, but also specifically in Europe. What do you think is the biggest leverage that a tech player can have when engaging with startups that closely?
Yes, a very good question. Before I answer this, let me compliment Klaus for his great business model, because when I started 12 years ago as a lawyer, I was very often super frustrated and bored by repetitive tasks, and I thought it would be so cool if AI could do this, and today we are there, so congrats, Klaus. Very cool idea.
Thank you. I feel your pain. We see it every day. Yeah.
Yeah, horrible. So this is a very cool era to be in. So what does Meta do to support startups? I would like to mention 3 points. One is open research. So with FAIR, our open AI research center in Paris, we do groundbreaking AI research to the benefit of the whole industry. Secondly, we provide open source AI so that people like Klaus and other creative founders here can use Llama, our open source model, to build their great ideas on. And thirdly, obviously, we do accelerator programs like the one that Codex AI won in Paris.
Do you want to maybe dive a bit deeper into the Paris ecosystem, both of you?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's been super great support and really shows the strength of European AI startups. Because there's the other great thing from Berlin, it's not far to London, it's not far to Paris. So it's been really great. We're using Llama, we're fine-tuning our LLM specifically to the use case of regulatory compliance in banks. And that wouldn't be possible without the open source approach that Meta is doing. So yeah, that's a great thing.
Yes, so on Paris, I would say that it's really not surprising that this program took place in Paris and not in Berlin. As we see President Macron bragging about the AI and the flourishing tech system or scene in Paris, it has been lately ranked the #4 tech hub in the world. Munich is the only German city in this ranking on place number 17, and Berlin is not even a part of it. And President Macron, he uses this to brag about it on his own LinkedIn page. While in Germany, we see lots of steel and car manufacturing roundtables. Don't get me wrong, it's a very good idea to invite these, but I don't really see this vision for the future, this embracing of technology and innovation as we see it in France.
And to be fair, Paris has the advantage, of course, that France is very centralized and every single startup will go to Paris. Whereas in Germany, it's a bit more fragmented, right? In Munich, we have more deep tech. Berlin is still a great place for fintech and AI technology. But I totally agree with you. That's even more reason to work against this fragmentation and unify the German, but also the European market to help startups go into the market faster.
Totally, and I think the UK is similar in France in that regard, that it's basically very centralized in London. Germany has a very interesting setup. Also, I mean, there are initiatives like the Digital Hub initiative for startups by the Federal Ministry for the economy, where they try to have these hubs, like you've mentioned, like Frankfurt more for the financial industry, and in Baden-Württemberg we have more the industry-specific kind of stuff. But still, I think these are different perspectives, but also very important when we talk about how Germany compares to other countries in Europe. For example, also with the AI Action Summit in France this year. Hopefully we'll have one in Germany soon. Klaus, in the beginning you mentioned you want to dive a bit deeper into what you actually do. And Marie, you also mentioned as a lawyer that it's a great business model, and I agree. So how does AI specifically enable you to scale in compliance and regulatory tech? And what kind of ecosystem support do you need to fully leverage that potential?
Yeah. I think you mentioned that it's quite a complex topic and maybe not the first thing a startup would think at tackling. It's actually super complex and it's becoming more and more complex every year. So just one number from since 2008 in the financial crisis, there have been 40 million new regulatory updates. That's like, I think, a couple minutes, a new one or something. It's incredible, I mean, some of them for good reasons, but it's an incredible degree of complexity, up to the point where big global banks can't even, with a pure human team, can't even make sense of all this complexity. So you need AI to understand what is even out there, what's even relevant for us, and how do we apply it to our own organization in order to follow the rules. And that's exactly what our agents do, what we built to help our customers. And it's been going pretty well. Everybody sees the problem. Everybody sees the crazy potential that AI has. So if you ask me, how can the ecosystem support more? I think, we've gotten great support to go basically from 0 to 1. But now how do we go from 1 to 100 is like the next big question. And I think two main reasons. We don't need so much support as we need maybe just the freedom to do the things we do and we understand best. And the second thing is, of course, later stage financing is a big thing where at some point every single startup has to go to the US to look for funding because we're just not that good here in Europe.
Yeah, you just touched upon funding. So obviously funding, venture capital, and support programs are very important for the startup ecosystem everywhere. But maybe we're lacking a bit behind in Germany. What is your perspective and what has been your experience?
Yeah, and I mean, these support programs are great. We've been benefited from them and we're very grateful. It helps very much in the beginning. But I think there's a point where a support program can get you to, and then you have to make your own steps. So, for example, I mean, we have one startup that I know very well, and they're doing great work, don't get me wrong, but their whole financing strategy is basically to go from support program to support program, which at some point kind of defeats the purpose, right? Because at some point they will have to go to market and build something actually for the industry. And another problem with the support programs is they have a very long timeline. So usually from application to when you get the support to then the final report, it can more than a year can go by, which is an eternity in startup terms, right? Like, who knows if you're even working on the same thing, and then that becomes a problem if you change your direction since the application. So I think the bigger lever is really removing obstacles and creating the environment for startups, the legal environment also, to do the things that they're good at as fast as possible and as good as possible.
Yeah, very concrete recommendations also for the policymakers. I know that we have some startups in the audience, and we also, have a startup area outside. Do you have any specific recommendations? Because you mentioned those next steps, maybe beyond support programs. What you would recommend to startups or people wanting to found?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I said it so explicitly, but I saw a presentation by someone from Deutsche Kreditbank, so a bank as well, and even he said, look, you can't wait until all the rules are in place and until all the framework is there, and then do AI exactly as you're supposed to. So I think it's fair to say, just like it's easier to ask for forgiveness later than to ask for permission now, and I think that's what I definitely would recommend to the startups out there.
Very good advice.
Period. Yeah.
And also it probably helps to disrupt certain industries.
Yeah, exactly. You have to be, to some extent, right? You have to be just a bit quicker and figuring out the exact rules later on the later stage.
Yeah, disruption is also probably a very important step in on the regulatory side and for policymakers. We work in policy, so it's also very important, I think, to go a bit deeper into that. And I think beyond the bigger questions, I think this is the fundamental and underlying thing that must be influenced, and Klaus, you already touched upon that. Marie, what do you think are the most significant structural or regulatory hurdles that, like within Germany and Europe, that prevent startups from scaling so that they can compete globally? Because I think that's probably the biggest problem we have right now.
Yes, so to answer your question, I would like to cite Mario Draghi, the former president of the European Central Bank, who has drafted a report for the EU Commission on the competitiveness of Europe. Because what he says, I think, is much more interesting than what I or Meta has to say, much more credible as well. So he cited several reasons why the tech scene in Europe is not as flourishing as the one in the US. One is something that Klaus just already mentioned, that is financing. So there might be financing in the beginning, but at later stage financing, we have a big gap when it comes to Europe and the US. So many startups, when they really want to scale at a later stage, they seek US VCs to finance them, and then subsequently they scale in the US instead of scaling in Europe, which as a European is a little bit sad. And why is that? Why do they prefer to scale in the US, or many of them? That's not only because of finance, it's because of the regulatory obstacles. So Mario Draghi, he wrote in his report that in a survey, half of small and medium-sized companies cite bureaucracy and regulatory hurdles as one of the main obstacles for them to scale. So it's much easier for some to go to the US than to go from Germany to Poland to France to the Netherlands and so on. So why is that? In Europe, we have a mindset issue. Like, I'm a German, Germans are skeptical, and we see risks first. So we don't see technology as the solution for many of our problems that we face, but we see it as a risk. And if I see it as a risk, I want to regulate that risk. And don't get me wrong, I'm a lawyer and I'm not against regulation. But for digital enterprises, we see that we have more than 100 pieces of regulations that they have to follow, and they are overseen by 270 regulators in the EU. So if I'm German, if I'm Klaus now and I want to scale to the Netherlands and so on, it's cool for them because regulation is their business model, so congrats to you, good idea. But still, it's very difficult, and we have many overlaps. One piece of regulation talks about data, the next talks about data as well. We have GDPR, we have the Data Act, now soon we will have the Digital Fairness Act, the AI Act will add another layer to the same thing. And that is very difficult, and I think this is where we have to start. We have to look at what is already there in terms of regulation and then see where the overlaps are. content-wise, but also from regulators, because they are contradicting each other. So I go to one regulator, me as Meta is the same. I go to one and they say, yes, you can do this, and then the next one says no. And then you have a fight between them, a court has to decide, and a lot of time passes. So even we, as Meta, we don't bring our technology first to Europe. We go to Brazil, we go to India first, to the US, and then in the end we get to Europe. And that's not a very good sign.
Totally agree. I mean, yeah, as you said, I'm also in favor of regulation, not just because our business model is kind of based on it. Like, don't worry, we have enough to do for the next coming years, even if there's new regulation. But yeah, there's a certain balance that we need to find. And I think what I often see, it's presented as if it's like a now or never situation, like you have to regulate now AI, else it will take over humanity and whatnot. I think that is a relatively unrealistic scenario. I think it's sometimes okay to first let people do the work and see what happens. And then when we see, okay, we took a little bit of a risk, now we have some bad consequences, then you can still step in. It's not like it's not too late to regulate the things later. So I totally agree with that. And the second point is what we also talked about earlier, the fragmentation. I think you mentioned it, right? You go to different countries' regulators, and they all tell you contradictory things. I think that's a huge potential if we unify that more, especially in the EU. Like one example is there's now an initiative to establish a EU-wide legal company form. It's called the EU Inc. And there's a lot of momentum there right now, which is great. But now there's discussions to, hey, it's great, let's have one unified legal entity, but let's make the rules different in each country, right? So now every of the 27 countries wants to do their own rules again, which kind of defeats the whole purpose. So yeah, I think we need to be bolder there and be actually more European and embrace regulation can be a good thing, but please make it in a way that people can understand and actually follow it.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that the ideas are there, but the execution is maybe not as friendly to startups and also corporates as we would like. I mean, you just mentioned like that you roll out your software to different countries first. Do you have maybe a few insights or maybe best practices that you can share that maybe Germany could adopt also from a regulatory side?
Yes, so I would like to cite Ukraine as a great example. We lately had a great talk with the ambassador of Ukraine, Mr. Makeyev, in Berlin. And he was super frank, like they embrace innovation and technology. And he said at the end of the talk, there were many members of parliament in the room, you know what, like if you want to be the world champion in having sorrows and seeing risks, you will be that, but it is really a mindset issue. And Ukraine, for example, we as Meta, we built an AI tool for them based on Llama that is translating European regulation to the Ukrainian language. And then we do an analysis, we compare Ukrainian law to European law, do a gap analysis, and then the AI gives some advice what to do to become an EU member sooner. A little bit like what Klaus and his smart colleagues are doing. And like they're embracing Llama, they're working with Meta. Like nobody in Germany would ever work with Meta to build such a tool for regulation, right? So it is really a mindset issue, and that is what I would advise Germany to do, like not working with Meta, but being a little bit more innovation friendly and a little bit more open, seeing less risks.
Yeah, that's great. And a little bit faster as well.
Yeah.
I was like, because it's not only sometimes the regulation, but sometimes you just have to wait very long for authorities. Like I think when we established Codex, we waited 3 months for a tax ID, so we couldn't bill any customers. And I'm like, why does this not take 24 hours? Why is it not real time at the click of a button?
In Ukraine, you can do that via an app.
Yeah, exactly.
Real time,
it's
one
just
day.
a number in a database. So that's what also I would wish for, apart from the regulation issue, to bring a bit more speed into all the processes.
Great. Yeah, also the mindset question is very important. We also heard it yesterday. And also last year, our president, I remember his speech in the beginning of the conference last year was also very heavily focused on a positive and a very opportunistic mindset. So I think, yeah, that's a lesson learned that we should definitely focus and hone in on that. Yeah, and you guys made the perfect segue. So if you had one piece of advice for both policymakers and the startup ecosystem in Berlin, in Europe, in Paris, well, not Paris, but like if you compare it to Paris, what would it be?
I think I've mentioned already, but to summarize, yeah, for startups, don't wait for permission, right? It's easy to ask for forgiveness later. Just do the things you want to do. And for policymakers, there's time, right? There's no need for FOMO right now. Like, it's not a time-pressing issue necessarily. We're always open to welcome the regulation also at a later point when we understand more about the technology.
Yeah, my advice would be a little less dystopian ideas and a little bit more utopia. Europe needs to fall in love with the future again. And if you have this mindset, markets will flourish as well. Be a little bit more like Klaus and a little bit less like bureaucrats.
Great, very nice takeaways, a very positive outlook, hopefully, for Berlin and yeah, Europe in general. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here and sharing your thoughts. And I'll hand over to Linda.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you.